You know that feeling when you're like walking down a flight of stairs in the dark and your brain is absolutely convinced there's one more step at the bottom?
Oh, yeah. And there just isn't.
Right. There isn't. Your foot just hits empty air, and for that split second, your stomach completely drops.
It's the worst feeling.
It really is. Your heart slams against your ribs, and your conscious mind just short circuits. You are utterly, entirely powerless.
It is a totally terrifying sensation. I mean, what you're experiencing in that millisecond is your vestibular system just completely panicking.
Basically a biological glitch.
Exactly. Your body realizes it has lost its anchor to gravity, right? And it goes into an involuntary absolute free fall. It is a pure, unadulterated survival reflex, just ripping the steering wheel away from your conscious brain.
And we universally hate that feeling. We hate being caught off guard, we hate the physical jolt, and we really, really hate feeling powerless.
Oh, nobody likes it.
But that feeling of total powerlessness is exactly what we are dismantling today. Welcome to today's deep dive, where we are looking at a really fascinating survival concept that flips that sudden panic completely on its head.
Yeah, it's a profound shift in how we view survival.
It really is. We are going to be exploring some incredible excerpts from a source text called The Power of the Calm Response, specifically an account titled A Single Sentence That Saved a Life.
It is such a compelling narrative, too, because it fundamentally challenges, our most basic assumptions about what it actually takes to survive a crisis.
Because we're so conditioned, right?
Right. We are conditioned to believe that survival is a matter of overpowering a threat, of being the biggest, the fastest, or, I don't know, the strongest in the room.
But the mission for our deep dive today is to really show you, the listener, that true power in a sudden crisis actually has nothing to do with physical strength. It is entirely about presence of mind.
Which is such a vital distinction.
Totally. And look, I know you listening right now are probably not planning on trekking through any dangerous predator-filled jungles anytime soon.
I would hope not.
Yeah, probably not. But the underlying mechanics of what we are talking about today, mastering that microscopic gap between a fearful, knee-jerk reaction and a conscious, deliberate response, that is the ultimate life hack.
It really applies to literally any sudden crisis you might face.
From a boardroom confrontation to a medical emergency.
Because the core premise is about recognizing that the initial panic, that horrifying stomach drop feeling on the stairs, it does not have to dictate the outcome.
It's just the start.
Right. The physiological reaction is just the beginning of a sequence sequence you can actually learn to control.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand how to escape a seemingly inescapable trap, we first have to establish the terrifying reality of the trap itself.
And the account paints a very stark zero-sum picture.
Very stark. We have a traveler. He is walking on a path through a dense forest. And the text specifically notes two things. The path is incredibly narrow, and the forest is dead silent.
Which is already ominous.
Very. And then, without any warning, a tiger steps out onto the path.
Yeah, the physical parameters of this danger are laid out very deliberately in the text.
It's not like he saw it coming.
Exactly. This isn't a situation where a tiger is spotted like a mile away across an open savanna where you have time to make a plan.
Right.
The narrative emphasizes two crucial constraints here. There was absolutely no time to run, and there was nowhere to hide. The trap is completely sprung.
The traveler is boxed in, and so he stops. The account notes that for a brief moment, fear entirely took over.
Which makes total sense.
It does. But I want to push back on the premise just a little bit here. If I'm stuck on a narrow dirt path with a literal apex predator standing a few yards in front of me, isn't absolute paralyzing fear the only logical biological response?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's that classic deer in headlights freeze. The brain's default fight-or-flight system just completely crashes because both options, fighting a 400-pound tiger or outrunning it, are mathematically impossible.
Yeah, the math doesn't work out.
So my brain, doing the math, realizing we are doomed, and just shutting down feels like the most logical thing it could possibly do.
What's fascinating here is the biology behind that exact paralysis you were describing. You are entirely correct that the deer in headlights freeze is logical from an evolutionary standpoint.
Okay, so I'm not crazy.
Not at all. When you encounter a massive threat, your amygdala, which is basically the brain's primitive fire alarm, hijacks your nervous system.
It just takes over.
Completely. It floods your body with adrenaline and cortisol. The reason we freeze is actually a deeply ingrained survival tactic because predators track movement.
Oh, right. It's the Jurassic Park T-Rex theory. Like, don't move. Its vision is based on movement.
Exactly. By freezing, your brain is making a desperate gamble that you might just, blend into the background. It's a biological calculation.
But in this scenario,
In this scenario, that calculation has failed. The tiger is already looking right at him. The camouflage gambit is over.
right, he's been spotted.
So the body is flooded with all this explosive energy meant for running or fighting, but there is no viable outlet for either. And this is where people truly panic.
Which is exactly what happens on those stairs. The panic takes over.
Yes. But the distinction we have to make, and what this source text illustrates so beautifully, is the separation between the feeling of fear and the decision-making process.
Because the story explicitly points out that feeling the fear is entirely natural. It doesn't expect the traveler to be some unfeeling robot or an action hero who just smirks at danger.
Precisely. The biological crash is inevitable. The amygdala is always going to sound the alarm.
Always.
But the surrender to that alarm is not inevitable. The story argues that while fear is an unavoidable reflex, it does not have to be the executive director of your actions.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the pivot happens right here.
Yes, the shift.
The traveler doesn't just stand there and wait to be eaten, he breaks the paralysis. And he does it by asking himself one incredibly specific anchoring question. He asks, what can I do now?
And I want to highlight the neurological brilliance of that specific question. What can I do now?
What's happening in the brain there?
Well, when you are in a state of sheer panic, your brain is stuck in an infinite loop focusing on what you cannot do.
Like, I cannot run, I cannot fight, I cannot escape.
Exactly. That loop keeps the amygdala in charge. By actively forcing yourself to formulate an answer to what can I do, you are demanding that your prefrontal cortex, the logical, analytical, problem-solving center of your brain, turn back on.
So you're literally rerouting the blood flow in your brain.
Yes.
You are pulling the emergency brake on the panic loop.
You really are. The amygdala is just a siren. It doesn't put out fires, it just makes noise.
I love that.
The act of asking a pragmatic, forward-looking question acts as a bridge. It moves the traveler from a state of raw, autonomic reaction to a state of conscious, executive awareness.
And he's running the variables, right? His prefrontal cortex is back online, and it's scanning the environment. It's a zero-sum game. The physical options are gone.
Completely gone.
But he finds the one remaining variable that the tire hasn't accounted for. And it's so wild to me, he doesn't scramble in the dirt for a rock. He doesn't look for a branch to wave around like a club.
No, he doesn't do any of the typical panic responses.
Right. He digs deep into his own intellect and realizes the one tool he still has absolute total control over is his voice.
It is an incredible demonstration of how awareness shrinks the universe down to the manageable present.
Yes.
In a crisis, we often panic because we try to control the uncontrollable. The traveler can't change the narrowness of the path.
Or the tiger.
He certainly can't change the nature of the tiger. But he realizes he has agency over himself. Finding your voice in a moment of absolute terror is the ultimate assertion of agency.
But finding your voice is just the first victory, isn't it? It breaks the internal panic. But the actual words you choose to project into the world in that moment, that is a literal matter of life and death.
It really is.
Which brings us to the de-escalation dialogue. The traveler speaks, and the text notes that he does it with profound calmness. He looks at the tiger and says, "I've been waiting for you."
And the tiger actually stops.
Which is crazy. So let's dissect the mechanics of why that works, because it isn't magic.
No, it's not magic at all. It is deeply rooted in behavioral psychology. The most critical observation made in this entire account is this: the tiger no longer saw prey.
Which is such a wild, almost counterintuitive concept.
It is.
The tiger is looking directly at a human being, a soft, slow, squishy human, but its brain stops registering prey. How does that actually happen?
It happens through a psychological concept known as pattern interruption.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, a predator's instinct is hardwired to react to a very specific set of behavioral triggers. Predators basically rely on algorithms.
It's like a checklist.
Right. And the algorithm for prey is universally consistent. Prey runs away, prey cowers, prey screams, prey smells of adrenaline and terror.
Yeah, doing all the things we naturally do when we panic.
Exactly. But when the traveler stands perfectly still, holds his ground, and speaks with steady calmness, he shatters that recognized pattern.
It's like an actor suddenly changing the script right in the middle of a live play.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
The tiger walks out onto the stage expecting the classic slasher movie script, right? the running, the screaming, the chaotic chase.
Yeah.
But the traveler confidently stands his ground and delivers a measured monologue from a completely different play.
Yeah.
He changes the genre from an action movie to a psychological thriller.
I love that analogy. It's spot on.
And because the data the tiger is receiving no longer matches the blueprint for prey, it forces the animal's brain to reboot.
Yes. The tiger's brain encounters a massive cognitive error.
Like a 404 error.
Right. It thinks, wait, if this entity is not acting like prey, it must not be prey. If it is not prey, what is it? Is it a threat? Is it a trap?
So the calmness itself becomes a disruptor.
Exactly. The calmness is the weapon.
And the dialogue continues. The traveler says to the tiger, "They told me only a brave tiger would come this way. I did not believe them, but now I see it is true."
Notice the nuance in those words, too.
Yeah, it's almost respectful.
It is. It acknowledges the power of the animal without actually submitting to it.
Right. It's entirely devoid of a threat, but it's also completely devoid of submission. He isn't challenging the tiger to a fight, which might trigger an aggressive response,
Right.
but he isn't begging for his life either.
This raises an important question regarding the nature of conflict, whether we're talking about wild animals or aggressive human beings.
Yeah.
How much of the danger we face in our lives is dictated by the role we unwittingly accept?
Oh, wow.
When someone attacks us, verbally, emotionally, or physically, they are casting us in the role of the victim.
They hand us a script.
Exactly. By projecting a completely unexpected, grounded outward energy, the traveler strips the tiger of its role as the predator. Because you cannot be a predator if the thing in front of you flat out refuses to play the role of prey.
Refuses to play the role. I love that phrasing. And that brings us to the climax of the story, which really reveals the ultimate thesis of this whole concept.
It's a turning point.
Yeah. Because of this calm, bizarrely respectful, deeply confusing dialogue, the tiger pauses. It just stands there, processing this broken pattern.
Computing the error.
Right. And then it turns around and it walks away.
It's amazing.
The man survives. But the narrative points out something incredibly specific and vital here. It notes, he did not defeat the tiger, he changed the situation.
That distinction is the beating heart of this entire philosophy.
Why is that so important?
Because we are so obsessed with the idea of defeating our problems. Defeating an opponent implies a clash of strength. It implies a battle where one force overpowers another force.
Which we already established wasn't happening here.
Right. The traveler had exactly 0 physical strengths to offer in this dynamic. If he tried to defeat the tiger by fighting, he would be dead.
Trying to win at the tiger's game is a guaranteed loss.
Exactly. He didn't win a fight. He fundamentally altered the context of the encounter.
He changed the rules.
He shifted the environment from a physical confrontation where he was severely outmatched to a psychological standstill where he held the advantage of conscious thought.
And in doing so, he completely removed the necessity for a fight to happen at all.
He did.
So what does this all mean for us?
Well, that's the real takeaway.
Right, because obviously the imagery of a tiger on a jungle path is incredibly evocative and memorable. But going back to what we touched on at the beginning, bringing this directly into your actual daily life, how do you apply this cognitive framework when you aren't facing literal jungle predators?
Because we all face them in some form.
We do. We all have moments where we are walking down our own narrow paths at work, in our relationships, in traffic, and something aggressive completely derails us.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it provides a profoundly effective blueprint for crisis management and emotional regulation.
Okay, walk us through that.
Think about a time when you were confronted by a deeply aggressive, irrational person.
Sure.
Maybe an angry boss who corners you in a meeting, or a stranger screaming at you over a parking spot. Their aggressive behavior is the tiger.
It is sudden, it is overwhelming, and it immediately triggers your fight or flight response.
Right.
Your stomach drops, your heart rate spikes, and your amygdala screams, fight back or run away.
Exactly. And if you react instinctually, if you start yelling back, or if you immediately cower and apologize profusely, you are confirming their algorithm.
You are taking the script they handed you.
You're playing the role they assigned to you. You are either a rival threat they need to crush, or you are prey they can dominate.
But if you apply the traveler's framework, you change the game entirely.
You do.
So step 1, acknowledge the adrenaline, but don't let it drive the car. Step 2, force the prefrontal cortex online. Ask yourself, what can I do now?
Yes. Realize that you cannot control their anger, just as you cannot control the tiger.
Yeah.
But you can control your output. Step 3, is the pattern interrupt.
Introduce radical calmness into a chaotic environment.
Precisely.
I've actually seen this happen in real life. You see someone